Here's something that's going to hit you differently today. Elon Musk has 24 hours. You have 24 hours. Your favorite athlete, the most successful entrepreneur you follow on Instagram, the person who seems to have it all together, they all get the exact same 24 hours you do. Not 1 second more, not 1 second less. So why does it feel like they're living in a completely different universe? That question used to keep me up at night. Seriously, I'd lie there in bed, scrolling through my phone at midnight, watching highlight reels of people crushing their goals, building their businesses, transforming their bodies, and I'd think, what are they doing that I'm not? And here's the answer that changed everything for me. It's not about how much time you have. It's about what you do with the time you've got. That sounds simple, right? Almost too simple. But stay with me, because by the time you finish reading this, you're going to look at your day completely differently. You're going to realize that you've been leaving enormous amounts of potential on the table, not because you're lazy, not because you're not smart enough, not because life hasn't given you a fair shot, but because nobody ever taught you the real rules of time. Let's fix that right now. The uncomfortable math of your life. Pull out a calculator or just follow along. The average American lives to about 78 years old. That sounds like a long time. It sounds like plenty. But let's break it down in a way that might make your heart beat a little faster. 78 years. That's roughly 28,000 days. Now subtract the first 18 years, your childhood, when you had very little control over your own schedule. That's about 6,500 days gone. Subtract the hours you spend sleeping. If you sleep 7 to 8 hours a night, which you should, that's about a third of your remaining life. Gone. What you're left with is a number that feels a lot smaller than 28,000. And every single day that passes, that number gets smaller. Now here's the real gut punch. Most people spend very little time actually thinking about this. We treat time like it's this infinite renewable resource. Like we can always make more of it, always get it back, always start fresh on Monday. But time is the one resource in your life that is genuinely, irreversibly non-renewable. Money? You can lose everything and rebuild from zero. Health? You can damage it and restore it. Relationships? You can repair them. But time? Once it's gone, it is gone forever. There is no savings account for minutes. There's no way to borrow an hour from tomorrow to fix what you wasted today. And yet, here's the wild part. Most of us treat our money more carefully than we treat our time. We comparison shop for the best price on Amazon. We use coupons. We stress over a $5 latte. But we'll spend 2 hours watching videos we don't even care about, scrolling feeds that leave us feeling worse about ourselves, and sitting in the mental fog of, I'll get to it later. That gap between how carefully we protect our dollars and how carelessly we spend our hours is exactly where dreams go to die. Busy is not the same as productive, and most people are confusing the two. Let me paint you a picture. 2 guys, same age, same neighborhood, same starting point in life. Let's call them Marcus and Jake. Marcus wakes up every morning at 6 a.m. He's always on the go. He's always got somewhere to be, something to respond to, someone who needs him. By the time evening rolls around, Marcus collapses on the couch and tells his wife, "Babe, I am exhausted. I've been going all day." And he has been. His calendar is packed. His phone is always buzzing. He's the guy at every dinner who keeps checking his messages. Marcus is busy. Jake wakes up at 6 a.m. too. But here's where things get different. Before Jake touches his phone, before he checks email, before the noise of the world floods in, Jake spends 15 minutes planning his day. He identifies the 2 or 3 things that will genuinely move the needle in his life. Then he attacks those things first, before anything else. By noon, Jake has done the most important work of his day. The rest is follow-through and maintenance. 5 years later, Marcus is still busy, still exhausted, still saying, "I just don't have enough time." But not much has changed in his life. Jake? Different story entirely, same 24 hours, completely different results. The difference isn't talent, it isn't luck. It isn't connections or family money or living in the right city. The difference is that Jake understands something most people never figure out. Being busy and being productive are not the same thing. In fact, sometimes they're the complete opposite. Busy is reactive. Productive is intentional. Busy is responding to everyone else's agenda. Productive is executing your own. Busy feels like running on a treadmill. Lots of movement, no forward progress. Productive feels like driving on a highway. You know where you're going, and every mile takes you closer. Time is the ultimate investment. Here's a mental shift that will change how you see every hour of every day. Stop thinking of time as something you spend. Start thinking of it as something you invest. Think about how a smart investor thinks. They don't just throw money at random things and hope for the best. They're strategic. They look at where their capital will generate the greatest return over the long run. They're willing to delay short-term pleasure for long-term gain. They understand that small, consistent investments compound into something extraordinary over time. That's exactly how the most successful people think about their time. Every hour you invest in learning a new skill is an hour that pays dividends for years. Every hour you invest in your health today is an hour that prevents you from losing weeks or months to illness and recovery down the road. Every hour you invest in building meaningful relationships compounds into a network of support, opportunity, and joy that money literally cannot buy. But here's the flip side. Every hour you waste is also an investment. Just an investment in staying exactly where you are. When you spend 3 hours a day on social media, and the average American actually does, you're investing 1,095 hours per year in someone else's content, in someone else's business model, in an experience that's been specifically engineered to hijack your attention and give you just enough dopamine to keep coming back. What could you do with 1,095 hours? You could learn a new language to conversational fluency. You could write a book. You could get a certification. You could build a side business from zero to generating income. You could read 50 to 70 books. None of that is an exaggeration. None of it requires special talent. It just requires redirecting the time you're already spending, just pointing it at something that actually matters to you. The compound effect of small choices. Here's a concept that changed my life, and I want to make sure it lands for you the way it landed for me. Every choice you make about how to spend your time is either adding compound interest to your future or it's adding compound interest to your stagnation. There's no neutral ground. Every hour is either working for you or working against you. Let's do some math together. Suppose you commit to reading just 20 pages a day. 20 pages. That's maybe 20 to 30 minutes of focused reading. At that pace, you'll finish roughly 20 to 25 books in a year. The average American reads less than one book per year. In 5 years, you will have absorbed the knowledge, perspectives, and wisdom of 100 to 125 books. You will think differently. You will see the world differently. You will have frameworks and mental models that most people around you simply don't have, all from 20 pages a day. Now, let's say you commit to exercising just 30 minutes a day, not training for an Olympic event, not going crazy, just 30 minutes of intentional movement. In a year, that's 182 hours invested in your physical health. Your energy levels change. Your mood changes. Your confidence changes. Your cognitive performance changes. Because exercise is literally one of the most powerful things you can do for your brain. Or let's say you commit to working on a skill, writing, coding, public speaking, sales, graphic design, whatever it is that aligns with your goals, for just one focused hour a day. In a year, that's 365 hours of deliberate practice in that skill. Research suggests it takes around 1,000 hours to reach a high level of competency in most skills. In less than 3 years of 1 hour a day, you could become genuinely excellent at something that transforms your career. None of this is magic. None of this is reserved for special people. This is just math. Beautiful, unforgiving, equalizing math. The math works the same for everyone. The question is, whose side do you want it working on? Why most people never change anything. Before we wrap up this first section, I want to address the thing that's probably bubbling up in your mind right now. Because I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds great, but I already know I should be using my time better. Why haven't I? Fair question. Here's the honest answer. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you lack willpower. It's not because you're somehow different from the people who figured this out. It's because your environment is working against you. The apps on your phone, the design of your social media feeds, the constant ping of notifications, all of it has been built by teams of the world's smartest engineers and psychologists to capture your attention and keep it. These are not neutral tools. They're machines specifically engineered to pull you away from your intentions. And here's what makes it so insidious. They give you just enough pleasure to feel okay about it in the moment. You don't feel like you're losing. You feel like you're relaxing, connecting, staying informed. But while you're doing that, time is moving. And it doesn't come back. Understanding this isn't about blame or guilt. It's about clarity. Once you see the game that's being played with your attention, you can start to play a different game. You can start to be the person who decides where your time goes, instead of the person whose time gets decided for them. That's what the rest of this guide is about. Not hacks or gimmicks. Not some 75-step morning routine that sounds impressive but falls apart after a week. Just clear, honest, practical strategies for taking back control of the most valuable resource you'll ever have. Your time, your 24 hours. Let's make them count. Part 2. The morning equation. How the first 30 minutes decide your entire day. Let me ask you something. and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. What's the very first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? If you're like most people, and I mean most people, like north of 80% according to behavioral research, the answer is you reach for your phone before your feet hit the floor, before you've taken a full breath, before your brain has even fully booted up. Your hand is already moving toward that little glowing rectangle on your nightstand. And look, I'm not here to shame you. I did the same thing for years. Most of us do. But I want to show you exactly what happens in your brain when you start your morning that way. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, you'll want to change it. Here's the thing. Your brain, in the first 20 to 30 minutes after waking, is in a uniquely vulnerable and powerful state at the same time. During sleep, your brain has been consolidating memories, processing emotions, and essentially performing a system reset. You wake up in a state that neuroscientists describe as closer to the theta brainwave state, the same state associated with deep creativity, openness to new ideas, and high receptivity to suggestion. In plain English, your brain is fresh, open, and ready to be programmed. The question is, who's doing the programming? The scroll trap. What really happens when you wake up to your phone? Picture this. Your alarm goes off at 7 a.m. You silence it, and in the same motion, you unlock your phone. You've got 14 notifications. A group chat blew up overnight. Someone commented on your post. There's a news alert about something alarming happening somewhere. Your cousin posted vacation photos that somehow make you feel vaguely inadequate. There's a funny meme that makes you chuckle, an email from your boss that makes your stomach tighten, and all of this happens in the first 4 minutes of your day. What your brain is experiencing in those 4 minutes is a full-scale information assault. Dozens of micro-emotions, comparison triggers, stress signals, dopamine hits, anxiety spikes. Your nervous system, which was calm and regulated just moments ago, is now in reactive mode. And here's the brutal truth. That reactive state tends to follow you for the rest of the day. Science backs this up. Research in cognitive psychology shows that the emotional and mental tone we establish in the first 20 minutes of our day has an outsized influence on our decision-making, focus, and emotional regulation throughout the rest of the day. It's called the morning priming effect, and it works whether you're aware of it or not. When you start your morning in reactive mode, responding to other people's content, other people's agendas, other people's emotions, you're essentially handing the steering wheel of your day to everyone except yourself. By the time you scroll for 20 minutes, your brain is cluttered with information that has nothing to do with your goals, your priorities, or who you're trying to become. Compare that to this. You wake up, and instead of reaching for your phone, you take 3 slow, deep breaths. You sit up. You spend 5 minutes in silence, just letting your mind settle. Then you open a notebook and write down 3 things. What you're grateful for, what your top priority is today, and 1 word that describes how you want to show up. That's it. 10 minutes total, same morning, completely different brain state. The first version starts your day on someone else's terms. The second version starts it on yours. The power of intentional mornings, what high performers actually do now, before you start picturing some unrealistic 5 a.m. morning routine with cold plunges, hour-long meditation sessions, and green smoothies. Let me stop you right there. That's not what this is about. I've studied the morning habits of hundreds of highly successful people, entrepreneurs, athletes, executives, artists, scientists. And you know what the common thread is? It's not the length of the routine. It's not the specific activities. It's the intentionality. Every single one of them starts their day with some form of deliberate choice about how they want to show up. Some meditate for 30 seconds. Some journal for 20 minutes. Some go for a run. Some pray. Some just sit quietly with the cup of coffee and think. The form varies wildly. The function is always the same. They decide who they're going to be today before the world gets a chance to decide for them. Let me give you a concrete example that might hit close to home. Think about two people, let's call them Derek and Amanda, who both have demanding jobs, families, and about 1,000,000 things competing for their attention every single day. Derek wakes up 20 minutes before he has to leave the house. He's immediately stressed. He grabs his phone, sees a bunch of messages he hasn't responded to, feels guilty, fires off a few rushed replies, scrolls Instagram for 3 minutes just to wake up, and then rushes through getting ready. He's out the door feeling behind before his day has even started. By 9 a.m., he's already in that frantic, scattered energy that will define his entire work day. Amanda wakes up 30 minutes earlier than she needs to. Before she checks anything, she makes coffee, sits at her kitchen table, and spends 10 minutes doing 3 things. She writes down what she's grateful for. She identifies her single most important task for the day, and she visualizes what a successful, focused day looks like. Then she gets ready, commutes, and walks into her day feeling like she's driving the car instead of hanging on to the roof. Same job, same responsibilities, same external pressures, completely different internal experience, and completely different results. The difference is 30 minutes and a decision. The 3 questions that will transform your mornings. I want to give you something practical here, something you can actually use starting tomorrow morning. There are 3 questions, just 3, that, if you ask them every single morning before you touch your phone or engage with the outside world, will fundamentally shift the quality of your days. Question 1. What is the single most important thing I need to accomplish today? Not the 10 things on your to-do list, not everything that would be nice to get done. The one thing, the thing that, if you did nothing else, would still make today a success. When you identify that one thing, your MIT, your most important task, your brain immediately starts organizing around it. You're giving your mind a target, and minds are extraordinarily good at hitting targets they're clearly given. Question 2. What do I need to let go of from yesterday? This one is underrated. So many people wake up carrying the emotional weight of yesterday. The conversation that didn't go well, the task they didn't finish, the mistake they made, the goal they fell short of. That weight doesn't just disappear overnight. You have to consciously set it down. Take 60 seconds in the morning to acknowledge what happened yesterday. Extract whatever lesson is there, and then make a deliberate choice to leave it behind. Today is a new day. Your brain needs permission to treat it that way. Question 3. How do I want to show up today? This is the character question. Not what you want to do, but who you want to be. Patient, focused, courageous, creative, energetic. Pick one word, just one. Write it down. Put it somewhere you'll see it. That single word becomes an anchor for your day. When things get chaotic, and they will, that word is a compass. It reminds you of the version of yourself you decided to be this morning when your head was clear and your intentions were clean. 3 questions, 5 to 10 minutes, every morning. I know it sounds almost too simple. That's usually how the most powerful things in life sound before you try them. The neuroscience of starting right. Let me go a little deeper for a moment, because understanding the why behind this stuff makes it a lot easier to stay committed to it. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system, or RAS. Think of it as your brain's filter. Because your brain is constantly bombarded with millions of pieces of sensory information every second, it needs a way to decide what to pay attention to and what to ignore. The RAS does that filtering based largely on what you've told your brain to care about. Here's why this matters for mornings. Whatever you focus on in the first part of your day, your RAS starts scanning for more of. If you spend your morning consuming anxiety-inducing news and doom scrolling through social media, your RAS is primed to notice threats, problems, and things to worry about for the rest of the day. If you spend your morning in gratitude, clarity, and intention, your RAS is primed to notice opportunities, solutions, and reasons for optimism. You're literally programming your brain's search algorithm every single morning. The question is, what do you want it searching for? This isn't positive thinking fluff. This is basic neuroscience. Your brain finds what it's looking for. Your job, every single morning, is to tell it what to look for. Building a morning practice that actually sticks. Here's where most morning routine advice goes wrong. It tries to make you do too much, too fast. You read about someone's incredible 4-hour morning practice and you think, okay, I'm doing that. You set your alarm for 4:30 a.m. last 2 days and then crash back into your old habits feeling like a failure. That's not failure. That's just bad strategy. The key to building any new habit, including a morning practice, is to start so small that it feels almost embarrassingly easy. Then let it grow naturally over time. Here's a simple framework to get started. Week 1, just 5 minutes. Before you pick up your phone in the morning, sit up in bed and take 5 slow, deep breaths. That's it. Just 5 breaths. You're training your brain to associate waking up with stillness instead of stimulation. 5 minutes. You can do this. Week 2. Add the 3 questions. Now take your 5 minutes of stillness and then spend another 5 minutes answering the 3 questions in a notebook. 10 minutes total. Still extremely manageable. Week 3. Add 1 physical element. A short walk, 5 minutes of stretching, 10 push-ups. Anything that gets your body moving before you sit down to work. Physical movement in the morning increases blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for focus, decision-making, and willpower. You want that part firing on all cylinders before you tackle your day. Week 4 and beyond, protect this time like your life depends on it. Because in a very real sense, your quality of life does depend on it. Notice that I haven't told you to wake up at 4 a.m. I haven't told you to meditate for an hour or journal for 45 minutes or cold shower or any of that. If those things resonate with you, great. Add them gradually, but they're not required. What is required is intention. What is required is making a conscious choice every morning about who you're going to be and what you're going to prioritize. The blank page principle. I want to leave you with an image that I think captures this whole idea beautifully. Every morning when you wake up, you're handed a blank page. 24 hours of white space, completely unwritten. And you have a choice about what gets written on that page. You can hand a pen to your phone, to social media, to notifications and news feeds and other people's emergencies and opinions, and those things will fill your page rapidly, chaotically, and with content that has very little to do with the life you actually want. Or you can pick up the pen yourself. You can take a few minutes to decide what deserves to be written on this page, what story you want today to tell, what version of yourself you want to be the main character. That choice, made or avoided, happens every single morning. It takes less than 10 minutes. And over the course of a year, the difference between people who make that choice and people who don't is staggering. The people who make it feel like they're driving their lives. The people who don't feel like their lives are driving them. Your mornings are not just the start of your day. They are the foundation of your life. Build them with intention and everything else gets easier. Let them happen by default, and you'll spend your days reacting instead of creating. Tomorrow morning, before your phone, before the news, before anyone else gets a piece of you, give yourself 10 minutes. Ask the 3 questions. Set your intention. Pick up the pen. Write the day you actually want to live. Part 3. The Priority Trap. Why busy? People never get the right things done. Let me tell you about a trap that's so cleverly disguised that most people never even realize they're in it. It doesn't look like a trap. It looks like hard work. It looks like dedication. It looks like being a responsible, productive member of society. People around you will actually compliment you for being in it. Your boss will praise you. Your family will admire you. You'll feel virtuous and exhausted at the end of every single day, and yet, year after year, you'll look back and realize that despite all that effort, despite all that busyness, despite all that exhaustion, you haven't actually moved the needle on the things that matter most to you. That's the priority trap. And if you've ever ended a long, busy day feeling strangely empty, like you worked hard but didn't really accomplish anything, you've felt its effects firsthand. The illusion of equal importance. Here's the core problem. Most people treat all their tasks as if they're roughly the same importance. They look at their to-do list, which might have 20 items on it, and they approach each one with similar energy and attention. They might knock off the easy ones first to feel productive. They might do the most urgent ones to relieve stress. But rarely do they stop and ask the harder, more important question. Which of these things actually matters? Not which is urgent, not which is easiest, not which will make someone else happy right now. But which of these tasks, if completed, will genuinely move my life, my career, my health, my relationships, my growth, in the direction I actually want to go. Because here's what most people don't fully appreciate. Not all tasks are created equal. Not even close. Some tasks on your list have 10 times the impact of others. Some have 50 times. And some, honestly, have 0 real impact on anything that matters to you in the long run. The problem is they all look the same sitting there on a to-do list. They all take up the same amount of visual space. They all create the same small anxiety of, I need to get this done. And so we treat them equally, spreading our time and energy across all of them. And we end up with mediocre progress on everything instead of extraordinary progress on the things that actually count. Meet the 80-20 rule, your new best friend. In 1906, an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto noticed something strange while studying land distribution in Italy. Roughly 80% of the land was owned by about 20% of the population. He started looking at other areas of life and found the same pattern everywhere. 80% of the peas in his garden came from 20% of the pods. 80% of the crime in a city came from 20% of the criminals. Over time, this observation became one of the most powerful principles in productivity, business, and personal development. The 80-20 rule, also called the Pareto principle. In the context of your time and your goals, it means this. Roughly 20% of your activities are responsible for roughly 80% of your results. Let that sink in for a second. If you have 10 tasks on your list today, 2 of them are probably responsible for the majority of the meaningful progress you could make. The other 8? They're either maintenance work, other people's priorities, or tasks that feel productive but don't actually move you forward in any significant way. Now here's the life-changing question. Do you know which 2 they are? Most people don't. Most people are so caught up in the blur of busyness that they never stop to identify their high-leverage activities. They do what's in front of them. They respond to what's loudest. They tackle what's easiest. And the truly important work, the work that would actually change their trajectory, gets pushed to later, which, as we all know, often means never. The college student who learned this the hard way. Let me paint you a picture that might feel familiar. Imagine a college student, let's call him Tyler, who's got a big exam coming up in 3 weeks. Tyler is a hard worker. Nobody questions his work ethic. His study sessions are legendary. He's at the library for 4 to 5 hours every night. But here's what Tyler's 4-hour study sessions actually look like. He spends the first 30 minutes setting up his workspace, getting his coffee, arranging his notes. Then he studies for about 45 minutes before checking his phone. Then he responds to some texts, which leads to a 20-minute group chat conversation. Then he gets back to studying, but now he's little scattered, so he reorganizes his notes for a while. Then he watches a few YouTube videos that are sort of related to his subject. Then he does a practice problem or 2. Then he takes a break. Then he's back, and by now it's late and he's tired, so he highlights some stuff in the textbook, which feels productive, but research shows is one of the least effective study methods. 4 hours, maybe 45 to 60 minutes of actual, focused, high-quality learning. Compare that to a different student, let's call her Sophia, who studies for 2 hours. But Sophia has identified the 20% of activities that produce 80% of her learning: active recall, practice problems, and teaching the material back to herself out loud. She does those things in focused 25-minute blocks with short breaks, with her phone in another room. No setup ritual, no reorganizing, no tangential YouTube videos. 2 hours of high-leverage work versus 4 hours of scattered low-leverage activity. Who do you think performs better on the exam? Sophia, every time. And she got 2 extra hours of her life back in the process. This isn't just a school story. This principle applies to your career, your fitness journey, your creative work, your relationships, every domain of your life. The people who win aren't always the ones who work the most hours. They're the ones who've identified their highest leverage activities and ruthlessly protect the time they spend on them. High impact versus low impact, learning to tell the difference. So how do you figure out which activities are your 20%? How do you separate the high-impact work from the low-impact busy work? Here's a framework I call the impact filter. For every task on your list, ask yourself 3 questions. Question 1. If I do this task exceptionally well, how much does it change my situation in 3 to 6 months? This is the long game question. Some tasks, done brilliantly, will significantly change your trajectory. Others, done brilliantly, will have essentially no effect on where you are 6 months from now. Those are your low-impact tasks. Question 2. Is this task moving me toward my most important goal? Or is it just maintaining the status quo? There's a difference between maintenance and progress. Checking your email, attending routine meetings, responding to messages. These things are often necessary, but they're maintenance. They keep the wheels turning, but they don't move you forward. Progress tasks are the ones that build something new, a new skill, a new opportunity, a new result. Question 3. Could someone else do this task, or could it simply not be done without significantly affecting my core goals? This one is humbling for a lot of people. We often cling to tasks because they feel important or because we've always done them. But when you honestly ask whether they're truly necessary for your goals, you often find that many of your daily activities could be delegated, automated, reduced, or eliminated entirely. Run your daily task list through these 3 questions, and you'll quickly see which ones deserve your prime time and full energy, and which ones can be batched, delegated, or dropped. The tyranny of the urgent. Here's another dimension of the priority trap that catches almost everyone: the confusion between urgency and importance. Things that are urgent demand your attention right now. They create pressure. They feel like emergencies. Your phone buzzes. Someone needs a response. A deadline is looming. A problem has popped up. Urgent things scream at you. Things that are important don't scream. They sit quietly in the background, waiting, working on your long-term goals, building your health, developing deep relationships, learning skills that will transform your career. These things are critically important, but they never feel urgent because there's no immediate deadline, no one demanding action right now. And this is where most people get it catastrophically wrong. They spend their entire day responding to urgent things and never make time for the important things. The important things keep getting pushed back. I'll get to that when things calm down. But things never calm down. There's always another urgent matter, always another fire to put out, always another notification demanding your attention. Meanwhile, the important work, the work that would actually build the life you want, waits, and slowly, quietly, the window of opportunity closes. President Eisenhower, one of the most effective executives in American history, who managed both a world war and a presidency, had a framework for this that's now famous: the Eisenhower Matrix. It's simple. Divide your tasks into 4 boxes: urgent and important. Do these immediately. Important, but not urgent. Schedule dedicated time for these. This is where your most valuable work lives. Urgent, but not important. Delegate these if possible. Neither urgent nor important. Eliminate these completely. Most people spend their days living in the first box and the fourth box. They react to urgent things, and they waste time on neither urgent nor important things. The second box, important but not urgent, is where life-changing work happens. And it requires you to be intentional, because nothing external is going to push you there. You have to choose to go there every single day. The power of the single daily priority. I want to give you one of the most simple and powerful strategies I know for escaping the priority trap. Every evening, or first thing in the morning before you touch your phone, write down your single daily priority. Not your top 5, not your top 3, your top 1. The one task that, if you complete it today and do nothing else, still makes today a win. Then, and this is the critical part, do that task first, before your email, before your meetings if you can avoid it, before the administrative stuff and the responding and the reacting. Give your single daily priority your freshest energy, your clearest mind, and your full focus. This sounds almost aggressively simple, and it is. That's the point. Because here's what happens when you do this consistently. You start every day with a win. A real win, not I cleared my inbox or I responded to all my messages, but a genuine, meaningful accomplishment that moves you closer to something that actually matters. That feeling of genuine accomplishment does something powerful. It builds momentum. It builds confidence. It reinforces the identity of someone who gets important things done. And over time, that identity becomes self-reinforcing. You start to become more and more completely someone who does the work that matters. From scattered to strategic, the weekly review. One more tool before we move on, and this one is a game changer. Once a week. Most people find Sunday evening or Monday morning works best. Spend 20 to 30 minutes doing a simple review. Ask yourself, what were my biggest wins this week? What didn't get done that should have? What distracted me or drained my energy? What are the 3 most important things I need to accomplish next week? What am I going to say no to next week in order to protect time for those 3 things? That last question is the one most people skip, but it might be the most important one. Because here's the truth that most productivity advice dances around. You cannot add more high-priority work to your life without removing something else. Your calendar is finite. Your energy is finite. Your focus is finite. If you want to make more time for the things that matter most, you have to be willing to give less time to the things that matter less. That means saying no to commitments that aren't aligned with your priorities, to obligations that are someone else's emergency but not your responsibility, to the endless scroll and the passive consumption and the digital noise that fills every empty moment if you let it. Saying no isn't selfish. Saying no is strategic. Saying no is how you protect the time and energy you need to say a full, wholehearted yes to the things that actually matter. The real definition of success. Before we close this section, I want to reframe something. We live in a culture that celebrates busyness, that treats exhaustion as a badge of honor, that equates a packed schedule with a meaningful life. And that conditioning runs deep. It can feel genuinely uncomfortable to slow down, to focus, to say no, because somewhere we've absorbed the message that doing less means we're not trying hard enough. But here's what I've come to believe, and what the evidence consistently supports. The most successful people aren't the ones who do the most things. They're the ones who do the right things. They've escaped the priority trap. They've made peace with the fact that they can't do everything, and they've channeled that acceptance into laser focus on the activities that genuinely move them forward. Their days don't look busier than yours. Sometimes they look quieter, but the quality of what they're doing in those hours, the intentionality, the focus, the alignment with what actually matters is categorically different. That's available to you right now. Starting with identifying your 20%, naming your single daily priority, and protecting the time to actually do it. The priority trap is real, but so is the way out. And you now know exactly where the door is. Part 4. The Distraction Economy. How your attention is being stolen and how to take it back. Here's a statistic that should genuinely disturb you. The average American checks their phone 96 times per day. That's once every 10 minutes during waking hours. And that number has been climbing every single year. We're not talking about intentional, purposeful phone use, checking directions, making a call, sending an important message. We're talking about the reflexive, almost unconscious grabbing of a device that has become so automatic, most people don't even register they're doing it. 96 times a day. Now here's what makes that number genuinely alarming. Not just mildly concerning, but alarming. It's not an accident. It's not a coincidence. It's not a reflection of some new weakness in the human character. It is the intended outcome of billions of dollars of engineering, psychology research, and behavioral design specifically aimed at one goal: capturing your attention and keeping it for as long as possible. You are not failing at focus. You are up against an industry that has made capturing your focus its entire business model, and until you understand that, you can't effectively fight back. Let's pull back the curtain. The attention economy. Understanding the game being played. In the traditional economy, companies make money by selling products or services. Simple enough. But in the digital economy, the world of social media platforms, news apps, streaming services, and free-to-use tools, many of the biggest companies don't sell you a product. They sell you, or more specifically, they sell your attention to advertisers. The product isn't what's on the screen. You are the product. Your eyeballs, your clicks, your scroll time, your emotional reactions, all of that gets packaged up and sold to companies who want to put their messages in front of you. And this creates a very specific and very powerful incentive. These platforms need to maximize the time you spend on them. Every extra minute you spend scrolling is another minute of your attention they can sell. Every notification that pulls you back into the app is another revenue opportunity. Every algorithmically generated piece of content that makes you feel something, outrage, envy, amusement, excitement, is a tool designed to keep you engaged just a little bit longer. The people building these systems are not bad people. Many of them are brilliant, well-intentioned engineers and designers, but they are operating within a system that rewards engagement above everything else. And engagement, it turns out, is most easily maximized not by making you feel good, but by triggering your brain's most primal automatic responses: fear, anger, jealousy, social comparison, the need for validation, the fear of missing out. These are the levers the attention economy pulls, and it pulls them with extraordinary precision because it has more data about your psychological patterns than you have about yourself. What distraction actually does to your brain. Most people think of distraction as a minor inconvenience. You get pulled away from your work for a few minutes, you come back, no big deal. But the research tells a very different and much more serious story. A landmark study from the University of California, Irvine found that after being interrupted, even briefly, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to return to full focus on the original task. 23 minutes for a brief interruption. Now think about what that means for your typical workday. If you're checking your phone every 10 minutes, you are mathematically incapable of ever reaching deep focus. You're constantly in the recovery phase, trying to get back to concentration and never actually arriving there. You're running a race where every time you get near the finish line, someone hits reset. But it gets worse. The cost of distraction isn't just time, it's cognitive quality. When we switch tasks, even momentarily, our brains leave what researchers call attention residue. Part of your mental bandwidth stays stuck on the previous task, thinking about it, processing it, worrying about it, even as you try to focus on something new. This attention residue degrades the quality of your thinking on the current task. You're not just slower, you're literally less intelligent, less creative, and less capable of deep reasoning when you're working with fragmented attention. Think about what this means across an entire day of constant interruptions. You're essentially operating at a fraction of your cognitive potential, not because you're tired, not because you're unintelligent, but because the quality of your attention is being continuously degraded by an endless cycle of distraction and incomplete recovery. Here's an analogy that makes this viscerally clear. Imagine you're trying to fill a bathtub, but the drain is open. You can keep running the water, working harder, pouring in more effort. But if the drain is open, the tub never fills up. Distraction is that open drain. No matter how much effort you pour into your work, if distraction keeps pulling your focus away, you'll never accumulate the depth of concentration needed to do your best work. Closing the drain isn't a luxury. It's a prerequisite for actually getting anything meaningful done. The dopamine loop. Why it's so hard to stop. You've probably heard of dopamine, the brain chemical associated with pleasure and reward. But here's what most people don't fully understand about dopamine. It's not actually the pleasure chemical. It's the anticipation chemical. Dopamine doesn't spike when you get the reward. It spikes when you expect you might get a reward. And this distinction is enormously important for understanding why scrolling social media is so compulsively difficult to stop. Every time you open Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, there's a moment of uncertainty. What's going to be there? Maybe something exciting. Maybe something funny. Maybe a notification that someone liked your post or responded to your comment. Maybe nothing interesting at all. That uncertainty, that variable reward, is precisely what makes it so addictive. It's the same psychological mechanism that makes slot machines so compelling. You don't win every time. In fact, you lose most of the time. But the possibility of winning, the unpredictable reward, keeps you pulling the lever. Social media is a slot machine you carry in your pocket, and it's been engineered by some of the world's most sophisticated behavioral scientists to be as compelling as possible. The notifications are timed to maximize re-engagement. The infinite scroll removes natural stopping points. The like and comment systems create social validation loops that tap into our deepest needs for belonging and recognition. The algorithm learns your specific psychological triggers and serves you more of whatever keeps you specifically engaged. This is not a fair fight if you're trying to resist it through willpower alone. Willpower is a finite resource. It depletes throughout the day, and you're pitting your depleted willpower against billion-dollar systems that never get tired. That's not a strategy. That's a slow-motion defeat. The real solution isn't more willpower. It's smarter design. Designing your environment for focus. Here's one of the most powerful insights from behavioral psychology. Your environment shapes your behavior far more than your intentions do. You can intend to eat healthy all you want, but if your kitchen is full of junk food and there's nothing nutritious within easy reach, your intentions will lose to your environment the majority of the time. On the other hand, if you stock your kitchen with healthy food and make it easy and convenient to eat well, you'll make better choices, not because your willpower improved, but because your environment changed. The exact same principle applies to focus and distraction. If your phone is sitting face up on your desk while you're trying to work, you will check it. Maybe not every time a notification comes in, but often enough to destroy your deep focus repeatedly throughout the day. Your brain is wired to respond to social signals. It evolved in environments where ignoring a signal from another person could be socially or even physically dangerous. You cannot easily override millions of years of social wiring through sheer determination. But you can change your environment. Here are 5 environmental design strategies that research and real-world experience consistently show to be highly effective. Strategy 1. Phone in another room. Not face down on your desk, not in your pocket. In another room. Studies show that the mere presence of a smartphone on a desk, even face down, even turned off, reduces available cognitive capacity. Your brain is allocating resources to resist the temptation even when you're not consciously aware of it. Remove the phone from the room entirely, and that cognitive drain disappears. Strategy 2. Notification audit. Go through every app on your phone right now and ask, does this app need to send me real-time notifications? For most apps, social media, news, entertainment, most email, the honest answer is no. Batch your notification check-in to 2 or 3 specific times during the day. You will miss nothing important, and you will reclaim enormous amounts of fragmented attention. Strategy 3. Create a dedicated workspace. If you work from home or have flexibility about where you work, designate a specific physical space as your focus zone. When you're in that space, the rules are simple. 1 task, no phone, no social media. Your brain is remarkably good at associating physical environments with mental states. Over time, sitting down in your focus space will itself begin to trigger a focused mental state. Strategy 4. Use friction strategically. Make distracting activities harder to access and focused activities easier. Log out of social media apps, so you have to actively log back in each time. Delete the apps from your phone and only access them through a browser. The extra steps create enough friction to interrupt the automatic habit. Meanwhile, make your most important work as easy to start as possible. Have it open and ready to go when you sit down. Strategy 5. Time block your distractions. This one is counterintuitive but powerful. Instead of trying to eliminate distraction entirely, which creates resistance and usually backfires, schedule it. Give yourself a specific window, say 12 to 12:30 p.m., where you check social media, respond to non-urgent messages, and browse freely. Outside of that window, those activities are off the table. Knowing the distraction is coming later makes it much easier to resist it now. The deep work advantage author and Professor Cal Newport coined a term that I think is one of the most important concepts of our time: deep work. Deep work is defined as professional activity performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that pushes your cognitive capabilities to their limit. It's the kind of work that creates new value, improves your skills, and is hard to replicate. Writing a compelling article, solving a complex problem, learning a difficult skill, creating something original. Newport argues, and the evidence strongly supports him, that the ability to perform deep work is becoming increasingly rare and increasingly valuable at exactly the same time. The economy is shifting toward rewarding people who can think deeply, create meaningfully, and solve complex problems. And yet, the culture of constant connectivity is making deep thinking harder for most people than it has ever been. This creates an extraordinary opportunity for anyone willing to swim against the current. If you can protect even 2 to 3 hours per day for genuine deep work, distraction-free, phone-free, single-task focus concentration, you will produce more meaningful, high-quality output than most people produce in an entire day of scattered, interrupted effort. You will learn faster. You will create better work. You will develop skills more rapidly. And here's the beautiful part. It compounds. Every session of deep work builds your capacity for more deep work. Your attention span, like a muscle, grows stronger with use. Your ability to concentrate, to hold complex ideas in your mind, to generate creative insights, all of it improves with consistent practice. Meanwhile, for people who keep feeding the distraction habit, the opposite is happening. Attention spans are shortening. The ability to sit with discomfort and do hard things is atrophying. The capacity for the kind of sustained, focused effort that produces extraordinary results is slowly being replaced by an addiction to novelty and stimulation. The gap between these two groups is going to keep widening. Which side of that gap do you want to be on? The hidden cost of always being on. There's one more dimension of the distraction problem that doesn't get talked about enough: the cost to your inner life. When every quiet moment gets immediately filled with content, when you reach for your phone every time you're waiting, every time you're bored, every time there's a lull in conversation, you're doing something that has profound consequences for your mental and emotional well-being. You're eliminating the space where your best thinking happens. Boredom, it turns out, is not the enemy of productivity. It's one of its greatest allies. Research on mind wandering shows that when our minds are allowed to drift, when we're not consuming external content, our brains switch into a mode called the default mode network. This is where we consolidate memories, process emotions, make creative connections between disparate ideas, and develop our sense of self and purpose. Some of the best ideas, insights, and solutions in human history have come from walks, showers, long drives, and quiet moments of apparent doing nothing, not from scrolling feeds. When you fill every moment with stimulation, you rob yourself of this essential mental processing time. You're essentially running your brain's software 24/7 without ever allowing it to run its maintenance programs. Over time, this leads to mental fatigue, emotional dysregulation, reduced creativity, and a vague but persistent sense of being overwhelmed and behind. The silence that feels uncomfortable is actually where growth lives. Learning to sit with a moment of boredom, to resist the automatic reach for the phone, is not just a productivity strategy. It's an act of profound self-care. It's giving your mind the space it needs to actually process your life, generate your best ideas, and reconnect with what matters to you. Taking back your attention, a 7-day challenge. I want to leave you with something concrete and actionable. A 7-day challenge that I've seen transform people's relationship with their attention. Day 1. Do a screen time audit. Check your phone's built-in screen time tracker and look honestly at where your time is going. No judgment, just awareness. Day 2. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Every social media app, every news app, every entertainment platform. Keep calls and texts if you need them. Everything else, off. Day 3. Implement a phone-free morning. Don't touch your phone for the first 30 minutes after waking. Use that time for the morning practice from Part 2. Day 4. Identify your peak focus hours, the 2 or 3 hours when your energy and concentration are naturally highest, and protect them ruthlessly. No meetings, no email, no social media during those hours. Day 5. Practice single tasking for 1 full hour. One task, one browser tab, phone in another room, timer running. Notice how uncomfortable it feels at first, and then notice how it gets easier. Day 6. Schedule your distraction. Give yourself 2 specific 20-minute windows for social media and casual browsing. Outside those windows, it's off limits. Notice how much more in control you feel. Day 7. Reflect. How was your week different? What did you notice about your energy, your focus, your sense of accomplishment? What do you want to keep? 7 days. That's all it takes to begin rewiring your relationship with distraction, not to eliminate it. That's neither realistic nor necessary, but to move from being controlled by it to being in control of it. Your attention is the most valuable thing you own. It determines what you learn, what you create, what you build, and ultimately, who you become. Every minute of it that you give away to engineered distraction is a minute you can't invest in your own growth, your own goals, your own life. Take it back, protect it fiercely, and watch what becomes possible when your full mind is finally working for you instead of for someone else's algorithm. Part 5. The Power of Small Windows. How to use the hidden time in your day. I want to start this section with a question that might change how you see your entire day. When was the last time you were bored, genuinely, uncomfortably bored, and you just sat with it? No phone, no music, no podcast, no scrolling, just you, the moment, and the quiet discomfort of having nothing to consume, if you're like most people, you can't remember, because the moment boredom arrives, and I mean the exact moment, sometimes within seconds, the phone comes out, the earbud goes in, the feed opens, and the boredom dissolves into a stream of content that feels productive but accomplishes nothing. Here's what that automatic response is costing you. Those moments of waiting, commuting, standing in line, sitting in a lobby, riding an elevator, the small gaps scattered throughout your day that seem too short to matter are not dead time. They're not wasted time. They're hidden time. And most people are burning through them without ever realizing what they're giving up. The math on this is staggering once you actually do it. So let's do it together. The hidden hours nobody talks about. Let's map out a typical American's day and find the hidden windows most people never think to use. Morning commute. The average American commutes about 27 minutes each way. That's 54 minutes round trip, 5 days a week. Over a year, that's approximately 234 hours sitting in a car, on a train, on a bus, mostly consuming nothing useful. Waiting in lines, grocery stores, coffee shops, doctor's offices, DMV, bank. Research suggests the average American spends about 37 billion hours per year waiting in lines collectively. Individually, that adds up to roughly 30 to 45 minutes per day across various contexts. Transition time, the minutes between meetings, between tasks, between activities, the 5 minutes before a call starts, the 10 minutes waiting for a friend who's running late, the 15 minutes before a class begins. These micro gaps feel too small to do anything with, and so we fill them with nothing. Exercise time. If you work out, you might have 30 to 60 minutes where part of your brain is completely available, especially during cardio, where you're physically engaged but mentally free. Household routines, cooking, cleaning, folding laundry, yard work, activities that require physical attention but leave your mind largely unoccupied. Add all of this up conservatively, and we're talking about 2 to 3 hours per day of time that is currently going mostly to waste for the average person. Time that's being filled with mindless scrolling, passive consumption, or simply blank mental idling. 2 to 3 hours per day. Over 1 year, that's 730 to 1,095 hours. Let me put that in perspective. Learning a new language to conversational fluency takes roughly 500 to 600 hours of study. Becoming genuinely competent in a new professional skill typically requires 500 to 1,000 hours of deliberate practice. Reading at an average pace, you could consume 80 to 100 books in 1,000 hours. The time you need to transform your life is already in your day. You just haven't been using it. The myth of the perfect time block. Before we talk about how to use these small windows, I want to address a mental block that keeps a lot of people stuck. It's the belief that meaningful work requires long, uninterrupted blocks of time. That you can't really learn something, make progress on a goal, or do anything valuable in 10 or 15 minutes. That you need at least an hour, preferably 2 or 3, to really get into it. I understand where this belief comes from. Deep, focused work absolutely benefits from extended time blocks. And yes, for certain types of tasks, writing a complex report, coding a sophisticated program, working through a difficult problem, you need sustained concentration. But here's what this belief costs you. It creates an all-or-nothing mentality that results in nothing getting done during the enormous amount of time you spend waiting, transitioning, and commuting. You're holding out for the perfect 2-hour window, which may come once a day if you're lucky, while ignoring the dozen 10 to 15-minute windows that are right there every single day, ready to be used. The most successful learners, creators, and high performers I've studied don't wait for perfect conditions. They've learned to extract value from imperfect, small, scattered windows of time. They've built systems and habits that make it easy to do something useful in even 5 or 10 minutes. They understand a concept that changes everything. Consistency beats intensity. Doing something for 15 minutes every day is more powerful than doing it for 2 hours once a week. Not just because of the accumulated time, though that matters enormously, but because of what daily repetition does to your brain. It builds neural pathways, it embeds habits, it sends your brain a daily signal about who you are and what you value. And over time, that signal shapes your identity. You don't become a reader by reading for 3 hours on a Sunday. You become a reader by reading for 15 minutes every single day. What you can actually do in small windows. Let me get very concrete here, because abstract advice about using your time better doesn't actually help anyone. You need to know specifically what kinds of activities work in small windows and which ones don't. Activities that work beautifully in 5 to 15-minute windows. Reading. This is the big one. A focused reader can get through 20 to 30 pages in 20 minutes. If you read during your morning commute, your lunch break, your evening commute, and a few minutes before bed, you're looking at 40 to 60 pages per day without carving out any dedicated reading time from your schedule. That's roughly 1 book per week, 50 books per year. The knowledge, perspective, and mental models you build from 50 books per year will compound into genuine wisdom over time. Listening to educational content, podcasts, audiobooks, and educational audio programs transform your commute, your workout, your household chores, and any other activity where your eyes and hands are occupied, but your mind is free. The key is being intentional about what you listen to, not just entertaining content, though entertainment has its place, but content that is actively building your knowledge, your skills, or your understanding of your industry, your goals, or yourself. Reviewing and planning. Some of the most valuable thinking you can do takes only a few minutes. Reviewing your goals, planning tomorrow's priorities, reflecting on what went well today and what you do differently. These micro-planning sessions, done consistently in small windows, keep you oriented toward what matters and prevent the drift that happens when you're just reacting to whatever comes at you. Vocabulary and language learning. Apps like Anki or Duolingo are specifically designed for short, high-frequency learning sessions. 15 minutes a day of spaced repetition vocabulary practice will, over 6 to 12 months, give you a working vocabulary in a new language, consistently, reliably, without ever needing a dedicated language class. Physical movement, a 10-minute walk, is not nothing. It increases blood flow, reduces cortisol, boosts mood, and research consistently shows, enhances creative thinking. Some of the best solutions to problems I've been wrestling with have come during the short walks that I initially felt weren't long enough to bother with. Journaling and reflection. A 5-minute journaling practice, just a few sentences about what you're grateful for, what you're focused on, and what you're learning, done consistently, builds an extraordinary level of self-awareness over time. You start to notice patterns in your thinking, your emotions, and your behavior that you'd never see without the mirror of regular reflection. Skill micro-practice. If you're learning a musical instrument, a language, a sport, or any skill that benefits from repetition, brief daily practice sessions are often more effective than less frequent, longer sessions. Your brain consolidates learning during sleep, which means daily practice gives your brain more overnight consolidation sessions than weekly practice does. The Commute transformation. Let me focus specifically on the Commute because it's one of the biggest and most consistently available small windows in most people's lives, and it's almost universally wasted. The average American commuter spends roughly 250 hours per year commuting. That's more than 6 full 40-hour work weeks. 6 weeks of time that most people spend listening to the same 3 radio stations, sitting in frustrated silence, or scrolling their phones at red lights. What if you treated your commute as a mobile classroom? Here's a simple commute transformation plan. If you drive, audiobooks and podcasts are your tools. Build a listening list the same way you'd build a reading list. Choose content deliberately, not just what's entertaining, but what's genuinely building something in you. At 250 hours per year of intentional audio learning, you will develop a depth of knowledge in your chosen area that most people take years of formal education to acquire. If you take public transit, you have even more options. Read, write, plan, reflect, practice a language, review notes from a course you're taking. The commute that used to feel like dead time becomes one of the most productive parts of your day. If you work from home, you don't have a commute, but you have transition time between waking up and starting work, between work and personal life, between tasks. Use these transitions intentionally. A 5-minute walk between finishing one project and starting another does more for your cognitive performance than immediately jumping from task to task. The aggregation of marginal gains. There's a concept from the world of elite sports performance called the aggregation of marginal gains. It was popularized by British cycling coach Dave Brailsford, who took a struggling British cycling team and turned them into one of the most dominant forces in Olympic and Tour de France cycling history. His philosophy was simple. If you improve every single element of performance by just 1%, the bike design, the rider's nutrition, the quality of their sleep, their mental preparation, their training methodology, those tiny improvements aggregate into a massive overall performance gain. The same principle applies to how you use your time. If you improve the quality of your morning by using it more intentionally, that's a marginal gain. If you convert your commute from passive consumption to active learning, that's a marginal gain. If you use the 10 minutes waiting for your coffee to review your goals instead of scrolling Instagram, that's a marginal gain. If you turn your lunch break into a reading session 3 days a week, that's a marginal gain. None of these individual changes is earth-shattering on its own, but aggregated across an entire day, an entire week, an entire year, they compound into something extraordinary. This is how ordinary people build extraordinary lives. Not through one dramatic overnight transformation, not through a single heroic decision. Through the quiet, consistent, patient accumulation of small improvements applied day after day after day. The waiting room shift. I want to give you a very specific and very practical mental reframe that can immediately change how you experience the small, annoying pockets of waiting that show up in your day. Instead of thinking, I'm stuck waiting, this is wasted time. Think, I just got a gift. What's the best thing I can do with it? This sounds almost absurdly simple, but the mental shift it creates is real and powerful. When you start seeing waiting time as gifted time, as bonus minutes that appeared unexpectedly in your day, you stop resisting it and start using it. Keep your phone loaded with content that serves your goals. An ebook you're reading, a podcast series you're working through, a note app where you're developing ideas, a flashcard app for whatever you're learning, so that when the unexpected gift of 5 or 10 minutes appears, in the waiting room, the checkout line, the lobby, you're ready to receive it. Over time, this habit of turning dead time into productive time becomes automatic. You stop reaching for distraction by default and start reaching for growth instead. The reflection practice, using small windows to think. Here's one use of small time windows that I want to emphasize especially because it's the one most people overlook. Thinking, not consuming, not producing, just thinking. We live in a culture that is deeply uncomfortable with unstructured mental time. We fill every gap, every quiet moment, every commute and waiting period with input. Music, podcasts, videos, social media. We are consuming information at a rate that no previous generation in human history has experienced. And as a result, we are producing original thought at a rate that is perhaps the lowest in modern history. The great thinkers, innovators, and creators throughout history, from Einstein to Edison to Steve Jobs, were known for protecting time to simply think, to walk and think, to sit quietly and think, to let their minds wander through problems without any external input competing for attention. This unstructured thinking time is where synthesis happens, where the information you've been absorbing gets integrated, connected, and transformed into original ideas, where solutions to problems you've been wrestling with suddenly become clear, where you figure out what you actually believe, what you actually want, and who you actually are. If you never give yourself unstructured thinking time, if every quiet moment gets immediately filled with someone else's content, you're running your mind in input mode permanently. And a mind that's always in input mode never develops the capacity for original output. So here's an unconventional challenge. Several times a week, deliberately leave your phone behind when you go for a walk. Sit with your morning coffee without any device. Let yourself be bored on purpose, and see what thoughts arise when you give your mind the space to actually think. You might be surprised by what shows up. Building the small window system. Let me bring this all together with a simple, practical system you can implement immediately. Step 1. Map your hidden time. For the next 3 days, keep a simple log of every pocket of waiting or transition time you experience. Commutes, lines, gaps between meetings, transition moments. Get a realistic picture of how much hidden time you actually have. Step 2. Identify your learning goals. What skill do you want to build? What knowledge area do you want to develop? What book has been sitting on your to-read list for months? Choose 1 or 2 specific learning goals that you'll focus your small window time on. Step 3. Load your tools. Download the ebook. Subscribe to the podcast. Install the learning app. Create the playlist. Make sure that when a small window opens, the content you need is immediately accessible without any friction. Step 4. Create a trigger. Link your new small window habit to a specific situation. When I sit down on a train, I open my book. When I'm waiting in a line longer than 2 minutes, I open my vocabulary app. When I put on my running shoes, I start today's podcast episode. Specific triggers make the habit automatic instead of requiring a decision every time. Step 5. Track your wins. Keep a simple running total of books read, podcast hours consumed, pages written, or whatever metric reflects your learning goal. Watching the number grow creates its own momentum and makes the habit genuinely satisfying to maintain. The compound life. I want to close this section with a thought that I hope stays with you. The life you'll be living 5 years from now is being built right now, in the small decisions you make every single day about how to use the moments most people throw away. Not in the big dramatic choices, not in the heroic all-nighters or the perfect weekend retreats, in the 15 minutes on the train, in the podcast during the commute, in the book at lunch, in the reflection during the walk. These small moments feel insignificant in isolation, but they are anything but insignificant. They are the building blocks of who you're becoming. Every time you choose learning over scrolling, growth over passive consumption, intention over automatic habit, you're making the deposit into the future version of yourself. And those deposits compound. The person you'll be 5 years from now, how much they know, what they're capable of, what opportunities they've created for themselves, will be almost entirely determined by the quality of those daily small window choices, multiplied by 1,825 days. The hidden time in your day isn't a nice bonus. It's an enormous, largely untapped resource that is sitting right there in your life, available every single day, waiting to be used. The only question is whether you'll use it or give it away. Part 6. The Discipline Bridge. How to build habits that actually last. Let's talk about the word that makes most people uncomfortable. Discipline. Just reading it probably triggered something in you. Maybe a mild sense of guilt, thinking about all the times you meant to be more disciplined and fell short. Maybe a flash of resistance, because discipline sounds hard, rigid, joyless. Maybe a quiet resignation, because you've tried before and it didn't stick, and some part of you has started to wonder if maybe you're just not the disciplined type. I want to address that last one head on right now before we go any further. There is no such thing as the disciplined type. Discipline is not a personality trait you're either born with or not. It's not a character quality that some people have and others lack. It is a skill, a learnable, developable, practicable skill, just like any other. And like any skill, it improves with the right practice and the right environment. The reason most people struggle with discipline isn't weakness of character. It's that they've been trying to build it the wrong way. They rely on motivation, which is inherently temporary and unreliable, instead of systems. They try to change everything at once instead of starting small. They set up for success, but not for failure. So when the inevitable hard days come, they have no safety net. This section is about doing it right, about building the kind of deep, durable discipline that doesn't require you to feel motivated every day, because it's woven into the structure of your life so thoroughly that it happens almost automatically. The motivation trap. Here's a truth that the self-help industry doesn't like to emphasize too heavily because it's not very exciting to market. Motivation is a terrible foundation for lasting behavior change. Motivation is an emotion, and like all emotions, it fluctuates. It peaks when you're inspired, when you watch a powerful video, read a compelling book, have a meaningful conversation, or experience a moment of painful clarity about where your life is headed. In those moments, you feel genuinely capable of changing everything. You're energized, you're committed, you're ready, and then real life shows up. You're tired, work was brutal, the weather is bad, your back hurts. You had an argument with someone you love. The couch is right there, and Netflix just dropped something you've been looking forward to. And the motivation, that bright, burning feeling that felt so solid a few days ago, is nowhere to be found. This is not a character flaw. This is just how motivation works. It ebbs and flows. It responds to your circumstances, your energy levels, your emotional state. You cannot control when it shows up and when it doesn't. What you can control, what you can design, build, and reinforce is your systems and environment. The structures that make the right behavior easy and automatic, regardless of how you feel on any given day. The goal is not to feel like doing the right thing. The goal is to have built a life where the right thing happens, whether you feel like it or not. That's what discipline actually is. Not white-knuckling through things you hate. Not forcing yourself with sheer willpower every single day. It's designing systems so smart and environments so supportive that the gap between intention and action shrinks to almost nothing. The science of habit formation. To build lasting discipline, you need to understand how habits actually work in your brain, not the pop psychology version, the real neuroscience. Every habit, every single one, from brushing your teeth to checking your phone to going for a morning run, runs on the same neurological loop. Researchers call it the habit loop, and it has three components. The cue, a trigger that tells your brain to initiate the habitual behavior. It could be a time of day, a location, an emotional state, the presence of another person, or an immediately preceding action. The routine, the behavior itself, the automatic action your brain executes in response to the cue. The reward, the positive feeling, relief, or satisfaction that follows the behavior, which teaches your brain that this loop is worth repeating. When this loop runs repeatedly, the neural pathway associated with it becomes stronger and more automatic. The behavior requires less and less conscious decision-making. Eventually, the cue triggers the routine, almost automatically, without significant thought, resistance, or willpower expenditure. This is why habits are so powerful, and why they're so hard to break. A deeply ingrained habit runs almost on autopilot. Your brain has essentially outsourced that decision to an automated system, freeing up cognitive resources for other things. The insight here, the one that changes everything, is that you can deliberately engineer this process. You can design new habit loops from scratch. You can choose your cues, define your routines, and build in rewards. You can architect your own autopilot, and once a positive habit is truly automated, it no longer requires discipline in the traditional sense, because it just happens. Starting smaller than you think you should, here is the single most common mistake people make when trying to build new habits. They start too big. They decide they're going to wake up at 5 a.m. and exercise for an hour every morning, or meditate for 30 minutes every day, or read for an hour before bed every night, or journal for 20 minutes every morning. And they try to implement all of this at once, fueled by the high of fresh motivation. What happens? For a few days, maybe even a week or two, it works. They're riding the motivation wave. They feel great. They tell themselves this time is different. Then the motivation fades. Life gets complicated. They miss a day, then another. The habit that felt so solid begins to crumble, and they're left feeling worse than before they started, because now they have fresh evidence that they can't stick to things, that they're not disciplined enough, that this just isn't who they are. None of that is true. The habit didn't fail because they lacked discipline. It failed because they violated the fundamental principles of behavior change. The research is unambiguous on this. Smaller habits are far more likely to stick than bigger ones, not because they require less commitment, but because they're easier to start, easier to maintain through difficult days, and easier to build upon over time. B.J. Fogg, a behavioral scientist at Stanford who has spent decades studying habit formation, calls this concept tiny habits. His core insight is that behavior change is most effective when you make the desired behavior so small that it requires almost no motivation or willpower to perform. So small that even on your worst day, you can do it. Want to build a reading habit? Start with 1 page per day, not a chapter. 1 page. Want to build an exercise habit? Start with 2 minutes of movement. Want to build a meditation practice? Start with 3 conscious breaths after you wake up. These feel embarrassingly small. That's the point. You're not trying to transform yourself overnight. You're trying to establish the identity and the neural pathway of someone who does this thing every day without fail. Once the habit is consistent, once it's running on autopilot, you can gradually expand it. 1 page becomes 5 pages. 5 pages becomes a chapter. 2 minutes of movement becomes 10, then 20, then 30. 3 breaths becomes 5 minutes of meditation. The growth is natural, comfortable, and sustainable. But it all starts small. Smaller than feels right. Smaller than feels worthy. Smaller than your ambition wants to accept. Trust the process anyway. The identity shift. Becoming the person who does this. Here's a concept that I think is the most powerful idea in all of behavior change, and it's the one most people never encounter. Most people approach habit formation from the outside in. They set a goal. Lose 20 pounds, read 24 books this year, build a successful business. And they try to work backward from the outcome to the behaviors. They focus on what they want to achieve. The most effective approach works from the inside out. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, you focus on who you want to become. You build habits not as a means to an end, but as expressions of an identity you're actively choosing and reinforcing. James Clear, in his landmark book on habits, frames it beautifully. Every time you perform a habit, you cast a vote for the type of person you believe yourself to be. Every morning run is a vote for the identity I am someone who takes care of my body. Every page read is a vote for I am a reader. Every hour of focused work is a vote for I am someone who does deep, meaningful work. Enough votes cast consistently over time, and the identity becomes real. Not just a goal you're working toward, but who you actually are. This shift changes everything about how you relate to your habits. When you're working toward an outcome, missing a day feels like failure, like falling short of your goal. But when you're voting for an identity, missing a day is just one missed vote in an ongoing election. You get back up and cast the next vote. The identity isn't destroyed by one bad day. It's built by the pattern over time. Ask yourself right now, what identity am I trying to vote for with my daily habits? Who is the person I'm becoming? And what would that person do? Not just when they're motivated, but on the hard days, the tired days, the days when nothing is going right. Then do that thing. Cast that vote. One more brick in the wall of who you're becoming. The never miss twice rule. Even with the best systems, the best environment design, and the clearest identity, you will miss days. Life will happen. You'll get sick. You'll travel. You'll have an emotional crisis. You'll have a week that is just genuinely, categorically terrible in ways you couldn't have predicted. Missing a day is not the problem. Missing 2 days in a row is where habits die. Research on habit disruption consistently shows that a single missed day has very little impact on long-term habit formation. Your brain doesn't interpret one miss as a signal to abandon the pattern. But 2 consecutive misses, that starts to look like a new pattern. That's where the habit loop begins to erode. That's where I'm someone who does this starts to sound hollow. So adopt what I call the never miss twice rule. Simple, memorable, and powerful. You are allowed to miss. Life is allowed to happen. But you never, ever let yourself miss twice in a row. Miss your workout Monday? You are in the gym Tuesday. No exceptions, no negotiations, no I'll get back to it next week. Tuesday, the very next available opportunity. This rule does something profound to your psychology. It removes the perfectionism that kills most habit attempts. It gives you permission to be human, to have bad days, off days, overwhelmed days, without those days becoming the end of the story. And it creates a clear, non-negotiable boundary that your habit cannot fall below. 1 miss is a blip. 2 misses is a trend. Never let it trend downward. Designing your day around energy, not just time. Here's a dimension of discipline that most productivity advice completely ignores. Your energy levels are not constant throughout the day. And building habits without accounting for energy is like trying to sail without accounting for wind direction. You can do it, but you're working a lot harder than you need to. Most people have a natural energy architecture that follows a predictable pattern. For the majority, though not everyone, cognitive energy peaks in the late morning, dips in the early to mid-afternoon, and has a secondary smaller peak in the early evening. Physical energy often has its own separate rhythm. The discipline mistake most people make is trying to do their hardest, most important work during their lowest energy periods, and then wondering why they struggle to focus and follow through. They schedule their most important task at 3 p.m. when their brain is running at half capacity, and then blame themselves for lacking willpower. The solution is to align your most demanding habits with your highest energy periods. If your peak cognitive energy is between 8 a.m. and noon, that window is sacred. That's when deep work happens, when the most important tasks get done, when the habits that require the most focus and self-regulation should be scheduled. Save the lower cognitive demand tasks, email, administrative work, routine meetings, for your energy valleys. Save physical exercise for whenever your physical energy peaks, which for many people is either morning or early evening. When you're working with your energy instead of against it, discipline becomes dramatically easier. You're not forcing yourself to do hard things when you feel terrible. You're doing hard things when you're genuinely capable of doing them well, and then using your lower energy periods for tasks that actually fit those periods. The accountability architecture. One of the most powerful and most underutilized tools for building lasting habits is social accountability. Not because you need someone to police you, but because human beings are deeply social creatures whose behavior is profoundly influenced by social context. When you commit to a habit privately, the only consequences of breaking it are internal, and internal consequences are easy to negotiate away. Just this once. I'll make it up tomorrow. Nobody will know. When you commit publicly to a friend, a partner, a coach, a group, breaking the habit has social consequences. Someone else knows. Someone else is affected. And our brains are wired to care about that very deeply. Here are several ways to build accountability into your habit architecture. Find an accountability partner. Someone who is working on similar goals and who you check in with regularly, daily texts, weekly calls, whatever format works. The simple act of knowing you'll be reporting your progress to someone else dramatically increases follow-through. Join a community, whether it's a fitness class, a book club, an online group of people working towards similar goals, or a mastermind. Being part of a community of people who share your values and habits creates powerful social reinforcement. You start to feel like this is just what people like me do. Make a commitment device. This is a strategy where you create consequences for yourself in advance that make breaking your habit genuinely costly. Some people make financial bets, committing to donate money to a cause they dislike if they miss their habit. Others make social commitments, announcing publicly what they intend to do and by when. The specifics matter less than the principle. You're making it costly to fail before the difficult moment arrives. Track visibly. A simple habit tracker, physical or digital, where you mark off each day you complete your habit, creates what behavior researchers call a visual momentum cue. Seeing an unbroken chain of successful days creates genuine motivation to protect that chain. Jerry Seinfeld famously used this strategy to build his writing habit, marking an X on a calendar for every day he wrote, and then simply not wanting to break the chain. The long game? What discipline actually builds? I want to close this section by zooming way out, because I think we often get so focused on the mechanics of habit building that we lose sight of what we're really building. Discipline, practiced consistently over years, doesn't just produce better habits. It produces a fundamentally different relationship with yourself. When you repeatedly do what you said you were going to do, when you show up for yourself on the hard days, when you honor your commitments to yourself, even when no one is watching, you build something that is far more valuable than any individual habit. You build self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of genuine confidence, not the surface-level confidence that comes from compliments or achievements, but the deep, unshakable kind that comes from knowing in your bones that you can count on yourself, that when things get hard, you don't fold, that when you make a commitment to yourself, you keep it. This kind of self-trust ripples into every area of your life. It affects how you show up in your relationships because you stop making promises you can't keep. It affects how you approach challenges because you know from experience that you can do hard things. It affects your ambition because you stop setting small, safe goals and start daring to go after things that actually excite you. All of it, every bit of it, starts with the small, daily, seemingly insignificant decision to do what you said you were going to do. 15 minutes of reading, 30 minutes of exercise, 10 minutes of focused work on your most important project. 3 deep breaths in the morning before you reach for your phone. Small acts, repeated daily, over years. That's the discipline bridge, the structure that carries you from who you are today to who you're capable of becoming. You don't cross it in one dramatic leap. You cross it one step at a time every single day, building it beneath your feet as you go. The other side is worth it. I promise you that. Now let's take the last step. Part 7. The 24-hour life. Bringing it all together and building your personal time philosophy. We've covered a lot of ground together. We've talked about the uncomfortable math of your life, the 28,000 days that sound like plenty until you really look at them. We've talked about the morning equation and how the first 30 minutes of your day set the tone for everything that follows. We've talked about the priority trap and how busy people stay busy without ever making real progress. We've talked about the distraction economy and the billion-dollar machine that's been engineered to steal your attention. We've talked about the hidden time scattered through your day, the small windows that add up to hundreds of hours per year. And we've talked about discipline, not as a personality trait you either have or don't, but as a skill you build day by day through smart systems and consistent action. Now, I want to bring all of it together because here's the thing. Information without integration is just entertainment. You can read every productivity book ever written, watch every motivational video on YouTube, and consume every time management framework in existence. And none of it will change your life if it stays in your head instead of showing up in your daily choices. This final section is about making it real, about taking everything we've explored and turning it into a living, breathing personal philosophy, a way of relating to your time that becomes as natural and automatic as breathing, a way of living your 24 hours that reflects who you actually want to be and what you actually want to build. The 3 pillars of a well-lived day. Before we get into the practical architecture of your 24 hours, I want to establish a framework, a philosophical foundation that everything else rests on. After studying the habits, routines, and mindsets of highly effective people across dozens of fields, 3 consistent pillars emerge. 3 things that the people who use their time most intentionally and most meaningfully seem to have in common, regardless of their industry, their personality type, or their specific goals. Pillar 1, Clarity. You cannot use your time well if you don't know what you're using it for. This sounds obvious, but the number of people who drift through their days without a clear sense of what they're actually trying to build is staggering. They're productive in a general sense, always doing something, always busy, but without a clear destination, all that activity is just motion, without direction. Clarity means knowing, specifically, concretely, with genuine conviction, what you want your life to look like. Not vaguely, not, I want to be successful or I want to be happy. Those aren't destinations. Those are directions. Clarity means knowing the specific outcomes you're working toward in your career, your health, your relationships, your financial life, your personal growth. When you have that clarity, every time management decision becomes dramatically easier. Should I say yes to this? Does it move me toward my destination? Should I spend time on this? Does it align with what I'm building? Should I learn this skill? Does it serve my specific goals? Without clarity, you're making those decisions in the dark. With clarity, you have a compass, and a compass changes everything. Pillar 2, intentionality. Clarity tells you where you want to go. Intentionality is how you actually get there. Through deliberate, conscious choices about how each day, each hour, each moment gets used. Intentionality is the opposite of default. Default is what happens when you don't decide, when you reach for the phone because it's there, when you say yes because saying no feels uncomfortable, when you fill your time with whatever shows up instead of what you've chosen. Default is the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance rarely leads anywhere worth going. Intentionality means pausing, even for just a moment, before each significant choice about your time and asking, is this how I actually want to spend this hour? Does this align with my priorities? Is this the best use of this moment, given what I'm trying to build? It doesn't mean every moment has to be optimized. Rest is intentional. Play is intentional. Connection with people you love is intentional. The point isn't to turn your life into a productivity machine where every minute is accounted for and maximized. The point is that the important things, the things that actually matter to you, are protected and prioritized, not squeezed into whatever time is left over after everything else. Pillar 3, consistency. Clarity and intentionality without consistency are just good intentions. And we all know what good intentions alone are worth. Consistency is where the real magic happens. It's the multiplier that turns small daily choices into extraordinary long-term results. It's the engine of compound growth. It's the thing that separates people who read about change from people who actually experience it. And here's the beautiful paradox of consistency. It gets easier over time, not harder. The first week of a new habit feels effortful. The first month feels like you're still deciding. By month 3, the habit is becoming part of who you are. By month 6, it's automatic. By year 2, it's just your life. And you can barely remember what it felt like before. Consistency requires you to play the long game, to trust the process even when the results aren't immediately visible, to show up on the days when you don't feel like it. Not because you're a superhuman willpower machine, but because you've built systems and environments that make showing up the path of least resistance. Clarity, intentionality, consistency. These 3 pillars support everything else. Build on them, and your 24 hours will be transformed, neglect them, and all the tactics and frameworks in the world won't move the needle in any meaningful way. Designing your ideal 24 hours. Now, let's get practical. Let's design what a genuinely well-used day actually looks like. Not as a rigid, one-size-fits-all prescription, but as a flexible framework you can adapt to your specific life goals and circumstances. Think of this as an architecture for your day. The specific rooms you put in it will be yours, but the structural principles are universal. The foundation, sleep. Everything starts here. I know we live in a culture that romanticizes sleep deprivation, where "I'll sleep when I'm dead" is worn as a badge of honor, and the person who stays up latest seems the most dedicated. This is one of the most dangerous and most thoroughly debunked myths in productivity. Sleep is not a luxury. It is the foundational biological process through which your brain consolidates memories, regulates emotions, repairs tissue, clears metabolic waste, and prepares itself for peak performance the next day. No amount of coffee, motivation, or willpower compensates for chronic sleep deprivation. Your cognitive performance, your decision-making, your emotional regulation, your creativity, your physical health, all of it degrades significantly with insufficient sleep. 7 to 9 hours is not laziness. It is the non-negotiable biological requirement for a high-performing brain and body. The people who claim to thrive on 5 or 6 hours are, in almost every case, simply adapted to feeling bad. They've forgotten what feeling genuinely rested and sharp actually feels like. Protect your sleep like it's the most important meeting on your calendar, because in terms of what it enables, it is. The opening act, your morning practice. We covered this in depth in Part 2, but let me re-emphasize it here in the context of the full-day architecture. Your morning practice doesn't need to be long. 15 to 30 minutes of intentional phone-free time before the demands of the day begin is enough to fundamentally shift the quality of your entire day. Use it for stillness, planning, movement, gratitude, whatever combination works for you. But use it consciously, not automatically. The non-negotiable: do not check your phone until your morning practice is complete. This single boundary, maintained consistently, will improve the quality of your days more than almost any other single change. The power block, your peak energy hours. Identify the 2 to 4 hours each day when your cognitive energy is at its natural peak. For most people, this is somewhere between 8 a.m. and noon. These hours are the most valuable real estate in your day, and they should be protected with almost religious devotion. During your power block, one rule applies: work on your most important task. The high-leverage, high-impact, needle-moving work that aligns with your biggest goals. Deep work, creative work, strategic work. The work that, if done consistently over months and years, will fundamentally change your trajectory. No email during the power block, no social media, no meetings if you can avoid them, no administrative tasks, just the work that matters most. This is where the magic happens. 2 to 4 focused hours of truly important work, done consistently, every single day. That's what builds careers, creates art, develops expertise, and generates the results that most people only dream about. The maintenance zone, midday. After your power block, your cognitive energy will naturally dip. This is the time for maintenance work, the necessary but not high-leverage tasks that keep your life and work functioning. Email, routine meetings, administrative tasks, errands, calls. These things need to get done, but they don't need your best brain. Save them for when your best brain isn't available. Include a real lunch break, not a lunch scroll. Step away from your screen. Eat something nourishing. Take a short walk if you can. Your brain needs genuine downtime to consolidate the morning's work and prepare for the afternoon. The people who eat lunch while working and scrolling and responding, they're not being more productive. They're accelerating their cognitive fatigue and reducing the quality of everything they do for the rest of the day. The second wind, afternoon focus. Many people experience a secondary energy peak in the late afternoon, roughly 3 to 5 p.m. If you're one of them, this is another opportunity for focused work. Not necessarily your most demanding work. Save that for the morning power block, but meaningful, purposeful work that moves things forward. This is also a good time for learning activities, reading relevant material, watching an educational course, having a meaningful conversation with a mentor or peer, reviewing and planning for the next day. The recovery zone, evening. Evening is for recovery, connection, and transition. Not for grinding through more work. Not for catching up on everything you didn't finish during the day. Recovery. This means different things for different people. Exercise. Time with family or friends. A hobby that genuinely engages and refreshes you. A good meal. A walk. Reading for pleasure. Whatever genuinely restores your energy and brings you joy. One critical boundary, create a digital sunset. Choose a time, maybe 9 p.m., maybe 10 p.m., after which screens go off. No email, no social media, no news. This is not just about protecting your sleep, though it does that too. It's about giving your nervous system a genuine wind-down period so you can actually recover, actually be present with the people you love, actually experience the evening as something more than a waiting room for tomorrow. The closing ritual, evening review. Before sleep, spend 5 to 10 minutes on a simple closing ritual. Review how the day went, not with harsh self-judgment, but with honest curiosity. What worked? What didn't? What will you do differently tomorrow? Identify tomorrow's most important task so you wake up already knowing what matters. This closing ritual does two things. First, it gives you a sense of completion, of having consciously closed the day, rather than just having it end. Second, it primes your brain for the next day, so you wake up with clarity and direction instead of the fog of having to figure everything out from scratch. The art of saying no. Protecting your 24 hours. No conversation about making the most of your 24 hours is complete without talking about the most underrated time management skill in existence, the ability to say no. Your time is finite. Every yes is simultaneously a no to something else. When you say yes to a commitment that doesn't align with your priorities, you're saying no to the work that does. When you say yes to a social obligation out of guilt, you're saying no to the recovery time your body and mind need. When you say yes to every request that comes your way, you're saying no to your own agenda. Most people find saying no genuinely difficult. We're wired for social harmony. We worry about disappointing people, damaging relationships, being seen as unhelpful or selfish. And so we say yes to things we don't want to do, to requests that don't serve our goals, to obligations that drain our energy without adding value to our lives. And then we wonder why we never have enough time for what matters. Here's a reframe that might help. Saying no is not a rejection of the person asking. It's an affirmation of your own priorities. It's an act of integrity, of honoring the commitments you've made to yourself and your goals. And paradoxically, people who have clear boundaries and say no thoughtfully and respectfully are often more admired and more trusted than those who say yes to everything and then fail to follow through. You don't have to be harsh. You don't have to be rude. But you do have to be honest with yourself and with others about what you can genuinely commit to and what you can't. A useful heuristic. If something isn't a clear yes, it's a no. If you feel genuinely enthusiastic about an opportunity, if it clearly aligns with your priorities, and you can see exactly how it serves your goals, say yes. If you feel uncertain, obligated, or guilty, if the yes is coming from fear of disappointing someone rather than genuine excitement about the opportunity, that's a no. Your 24 hours are yours. They are the most personal, the most limited, and the most valuable resource you will ever possess. Protect them accordingly. When life doesn't go according to plan. Here's something I want to address honestly because pretending otherwise would be doing you a disservice. There will be days, many of them, when the architecture we've designed falls completely apart. When the morning practice gets obliterated by a sick child or an emergency at work. When the power block gets hijacked by a crisis that demands immediate attention. When the evening recovery is replaced by an unexpected obligation that runs until midnight. Life is not controllable. Plans get disrupted. Emergencies happen. Your carefully designed 24 hours will, with some regularity, get completely scrambled by circumstances beyond your control. This is not a failure of the system. This is just life being life. The question is not whether disruptions will happen. They will. The question is, what is your relationship with disruption? Do you let one bad day become a bad week? Do you let a chaotic period undo months of progress? Do you treat every deviation from the plan as evidence that this doesn't work for me? Or do you do what genuinely resilient, high-performing people do? Acknowledge the disruption, adapt as needed in the moment, and return to your systems and intentions as soon as circumstances allow? Remember the never miss twice rule. One bad day is a blip. 2 bad days in a row is a trend. Your only job when life disrupts your plans is to not let the disruption become the new normal. And here's something else worth remembering on those hard days. Even an imperfect version of your ideal day is better than no version at all. You couldn't do your full morning practice. You did 5 minutes of stillness instead. You couldn't protect your power block. You got 45 focused minutes in the afternoon. You couldn't exercise for 30 minutes. You took a 10-minute walk. These feel like compromises. They are actually wins. They are votes for your identity as someone who shows up for themselves, even when showing up looks different than you planned. Progress over perfection every single time. Your personal time philosophy. As we approach the end of this journey together, I want to give you something that goes beyond tactics and frameworks. Something deeper. I want you to develop what I call your personal time philosophy. A clear, articulated statement of how you believe time should be lived. Not a to-do list, not a schedule. A philosophy. A set of core beliefs about time that will guide your decisions long after the specific strategies from this guide have faded from memory. Here are some questions to help you develop yours. I'd encourage you to actually write your answers down. Not just think about them, but put them on paper. What do I want my life to have been about when I look back from the end of it? Not what do I want to have achieved. What do I want my life to have meant? What experiences, contributions, relationships, and growth do I want to be able to point to and say, yes, that's what I spent my time on. That's what I chose. What am I saying yes to with my time right now? And does that align with my answer to the first question? This is the audit question. The gap between what we say matters to us and how we actually spend our time is often enormous. Identifying that gap honestly is the first step to closing it. What would I need to believe about myself and my time to start living the way I actually want to live? This is the identity question. Often, the real barrier to better time use isn't information or strategy. It's a limiting belief. I'm not disciplined enough. I don't have enough time. People like me don't get to live that way. What beliefs are you carrying that are keeping you stuck in patterns that don't serve you? What is the one change I could make to my daily routine that would have the greatest positive impact on my life? Not 10 changes. 1. The highest leverage shift available to you right now. Start there. Your personal time philosophy doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be as simple as a few sentences that capture your core commitments to yourself about how you'll use your hours. But having it articulated, written down, visible, gives you something to return to when life gets complicated and choices get hard. It's your compass. Build it carefully. The letter from your future self. I want to close with an exercise that I've seen genuinely move people, sometimes to tears, because of what it reveals. Imagine yourself 10 years from now. The version of you that has consistently applied everything we've talked about in this guide. The version that protected their mornings, identified their priorities, reclaimed their hidden time, managed their distractions, built lasting habits, and lived with clarity, intentionality, and consistency for a decade. What does that person's life look like? Where do they live? What work do they do? What relationships do they have? What have they built, created, learned, experienced? What kind of person have they become? Now imagine that future version of you sitting down and writing a letter to the version of you reading these words right now. What would they want to say to you? What would they want you to know about what's possible? What would they encourage you to start doing or stop doing right now? Write that letter. Seriously. Put this guide down for a moment and actually write it, even just a paragraph or two. Because here's the thing. That future version of you is not a fantasy. They are a real possibility, one that is available to you, one that is being built or not built right now, in how you choose to spend each of your 24 hours. The distance between who you are today and who that person is isn't talent or luck or circumstance, it's time. Specifically, it's what you do with the time you have. And you have today. You have this moment. You have the next 24 hours, which will arrive regardless of what you decide, fresh, equal, unmarked by what came before. The only question that has ever really mattered is what you'll do with them. Your first step starts now. Before you close this guide and move on with your day, I want to ask you to do one thing, not 10 things, not a complete life overhaul. One thing. Identify the single most important change you want to make to how you use your time, based on everything we've covered together. Maybe it's protecting your morning. Maybe it's identifying your most important task each day. Maybe it's putting your phone in another room during your work hours. Maybe it's committing to 15 minutes of reading during your commute. Maybe it's building a simple weekly review into your Sunday evenings. Whatever it is, write it down, right now, specifically, with a start date, which ideally is tomorrow morning, not Monday, not next month, not when things calm down. Tomorrow. Because here's what I know about the gap between reading about change and actually making it. That gap is closed in a single moment of decision, followed immediately by a single concrete action. The decision without the action evaporates within 48 hours, replaced by the next interesting idea, the next inspiring video, the next book that promises to change everything. But the decision followed by action, even one small, imperfect, embarrassingly tiny action, that's different. That's where change actually begins. That's where the identity shift starts. That's where your future self gets their first vote cast in their favor. You now have everything you need. The understanding of why time is your most precious resource. The framework for intentional mornings. The tools for identifying and protecting your true priorities. The strategies for reclaiming your attention from a world designed to steal it. The methods for finding and using the hidden time in your day. The science and practice of building habits that actually last. And the philosophical foundation for living your 24 hours in a way that reflects who you truly want to be. All that's left is the doing, and that begins right now, in this moment, with this decision, with this single first step. Your 24 hours are waiting. Make them count.